Invincible is utterly insane. This show does not care about showing the true overwhelming power of what it means to be strong. It holds it on full display as a proud, illustrious badge of honor. One of the most brutal yet gripping parts of the comic, the Viltrumite War, takes the idea of violence and gives it full creative control, unleashing its true potential. What we end up seeing should probably be used as a warning for why us as a human species are not ready for intergalactic combat. Like, who the hell knows what we might actually be getting into here? So of course, subscribe if you are new around here and leave a like, as it really shows you all want more content just like this, but for a variety of different series. Either way, sit back and relax as we delve into covering the entire Viltrumite War from the ever-expanding universe of Invincible. In the midst of fighting off the Flaxan invasion with the Guardians of the Globe, Mark gets a call from Eve. She tells Mark that she needs him as there is a big deal mall client. Due to currently being a bit busy though, Mark asks if she can just call Oliver. However, she explains that because he isn't under their insurance, it's too much of a risk. She has been looking for other heroes, but hasn't yet had a chance to sign any of them up. Not being able to get away though, Mark says that she's just going to have to rely on Oliver. Plus, he needs to leave later on, so she really needs to sign up other heroes. Nearby, Britt pleads with his boy to wrap this up, but Robot reveals that the Flaxans age at a rapid rate on Earth because time moves slower in their dimension. The only thing they need to do is figure out how they're currently blocking these effects, and the battle will be over. Knowing that they need to buy some time first, Robot summons a larger drone from nearby that launches a missile in the direction of the Flaxan tank, destroying it and revealing the device that blocks their aging effects. Seeing the aliens then start to flee like rats, he tells the other Guardians to focus on the remaining tanks. As the others all destroy the remaining distortion fields, they exclaim how easy and pathetic this race of aliens truly are. Robot though sees the Flaxans as a true threat. He states that decades pass between each of their attacks, and it's only a matter of time before they once again figure out how to evade, then enslave them. Jumping forth quickly, he screams to the other Guardians to follow him as he dives into the quickly shrinking portal. Getting back on the cell himself though, Mark lets his girl know that he was barely even needed here in the first place. Plus, the portal closed before anyone else was even able to follow. However, he assumes that Robot planned everything out to perfection, and they'll be okay wherever they happen to be right now. When it comes to the previous mall thing, Eve informs Mark that she sent Oliver to take care of it. Over at the mall, it's shown that Oliver, of all people, has somehow managed to wipe the floor with the pathetic looking Lizard League. Meanwhile, Nolan and Ellen attempt to find Tech Jacket, or just good old Zach as we know him. While flying together, Ellen asks about his wife, but Nolan tells him that he doesn't wish to see his wife because it would bring up too many bad memories. Landing just outside his house, Ellen points out how he never thought it was going to take this long to find where Bro was. Letting him know that it's their last chance to find him, Nolan says they have to leave after this, no matter how strong his strength is said to be. Outside of the house though, Zach's elderly neighbour asks if they just happen to be looking for the GOAT, Tech Jacket, before saying that he's most likely up on the space station. After shortly convening with the oldie, Ellen and Nolan fly up to space in search of the space station. Chilling somewhere above Earth, Zach's dad queries him over the way he eats his chips, flavouring side up or side down. Quickly activating and taking them by surprise though, Bro's Tech Jacket expands and covers his body due to its sensors picking up on something nearby. Seeing two men then flying right outside their ship, his dad asks if these are his mates. Replying that they aren't, Zach says that they have to be somewhat friendly since they're obviously strong enough to survive in space and haven't broken in yet. Because of that, he decides to let them in. Down on Earth, Mark arrives home and tells the actual wannabe emo, Oliver, that he cannot go with him and Nolan to Taliscaria. Pissed off with just being left behind again, he argues that the Viltrumites tried to kill him and his mother, so this is his fight. Understanding this, Mark argues that he needs to leave him on Earth to defend it while he's gone, mainly because he doesn't want to leave Eve and his mother alone. Realizing that Mark's also right here, Oliver asks why he's hearing this from him now and not their father. Stating that their dad is currently worried, Mark says he isn't also ready to see his mother yet. Much to the horror of the boys though, Debbie overhears them and questions who it is that isn't ready to see her. Stepping in and blowing the situation up while claiming that it was himself, Nolan asks if the boys could just give the two of them a moment alone. With the boys now upstairs, Debbie tells Nolan that there is frankly nothing he can say to stop her from hating him. Replying to her that he meant nothing he said that day, Nolan goes on to elaborate how his time on Earth has changed him. He spent years with Debbie, raising Mark and creating a life together. He thought it was all an act and was simply pretending to be something he wasn't. However, he admits he was wrong. He, over time, was slowly changing into the person she came to know and love. This never truly registered with him until his battle against Mark, where he was forcing himself into carrying out his mission. From that day, he knew that he'd never return to the Viltrumite Empire and had ruined the real life he'd come to love. With tears in her eyes, Debbie says that she doesn't think she'll ever truly believe that. One final time though, Nolan, with an understanding tone, just says that he's sorry. I actually love to see the growth in Nolan's character. It's great to see this more human side of him take control, even though he isn't even human in the slightest. It just goes to show that the idea of human love in the show is contagious, or at least that's what I like to think anyway. Meanwhile, Zach and Ellen are just chilling outside the house, waiting for Nolan to finish up on apologizing for just being a shit husband. Ellen, curious, asks if Zach's some kind of superhero, but Dude says it's only in a loose sense. If there is a big threat, he'll help out, otherwise he has school and other things taking up the majority of his time. Asking a question back, Zach hilariously asks if Bro's actually an alien, much to Ellen's amusement, who asks what gave it away. Back indoors, Nolan goes upstairs and asks Mark to leave so that he can talk with Oliver for a little bit. Alone with his youngest, Nolan tells Oliver that he misses him and would like to know him better. Oliver tries to start, but gets a bit choked up and can't figure out where to start talking. Cutting him off though, Nolan says that he's changed his mind and now decided to bring him along with them. Then maybe, during the trip, they could talk some more, as obviously he has so much to catch up on. Over with Mark, Dude arrives at Eve's house to inform her that he has to go. Immediately they embrace and, I'm gonna have to skip over that, but they definitely slam a few times. You've got to leave the missus with an experience that she'll never forget. Afterwards, our boy apologizes for everything. He's sorry for dragging her into this life. He's sorry that he always has to leave and put himself in danger. Rolling on top of him, Eve refuses to listen as she doesn't want to think about the idea of Mark dying. Mark, though, still pushes, saying that he hasn't even given it much thought to what he's getting into. This isn't some battle, this is war. A war between two impossibly powerful forces. Again though, Eve just tells him to stop talking and not say another word. Instead, all she wants is for him to hold her until he has to go. Laying there as Mark grips her tightly, tears form in Eve's eyes and roll down her face, and she battles with the idea of telling Mark about their child. While Mark and the squad rapidly boosted through the cosmos on a large ship, they chatted amongst themselves and joked in preparation for the upcoming battle, when suddenly the vessel was struck by something, causing a violent explosion that puts everyone's lives in danger. With the ship destroyed and its scrap left to roam the emptiness of space for eternity, the bridge crew automatically detaches and begins heading back towards the home base. Only now, just realizing that the main ship was actually hit by an attack, and not content with leaving their father to die in the cold vacuum, Mark, Oliver and Tech Jacket move to the airlock in preparation to go look for him. Holding their breath as they fly out, the trio communicates using a special bit of tech that allows their thoughts to be transmitted to someone else. Wondering what to do, Mark tells his little bro to just remain calm and look for anyone that went missing. However, as Mark himself glances up, his demeanor changes as he comes face to face with someone that he was absolutely sure he killed. The Viltrumite Conquest. Accompanying him to battle this time is Lucen, a 1,000-year-old being born on the planet Viltrum, and some random ass photo Viltrumite that's actually there with him. Floating there, Conquest gloats about how happy he is to get a second chance to fight Mark, and points out how he can see that he decided to bring a few friends of his own with him this time. Pissed off, Mark listens as the old fart continues. He elaborates that, unlike last time, his orders are simple. Leave no one alive. Slaughter them all. He even admits that he underestimated Mark the first time, but surely he's gone and left his girl at home this time. Obviously, if you want to know what bro's actually referring to, then be sure to check out my video explaining the first fight between these two. I'll leave a link down in the description below. But either way, gritting his teeth, Mark becomes angry at the sight of seeing Conquest. Seeing this himself, Conquest thinks it's a pity. However, it's alright in his eyes, as since Mark brought along some help, it should make this fight ever the more brutal. Still, he questions if Mark grossly overestimated the abilities of the Geldarians. After all, they need technology to even compete with beasts like themselves. Seeing that the kid's arm's also healed, he states he'll enjoy breaking it again, before finally telling Mark that he's aiming to kill everyone else first, so he hopes he enjoys the show. Oliver, like a complete muppet, boosts towards Conquest. Mark, behind, screams for him to halt. However, before he's able to catch up and stop him, Nolan intervenes, grabbing a hold of our boy and preventing him from helping. Firing a beam from his own wrist phaser, Zack questions the others as he thought they were going to form a plan or something, but now he's just left there aimlessly shooting at them. Elsewhere on the battlefield, and emerging from the debris left over from the ship's explosion, Nolan can only watch in horror as he realizes that Conquest has returned. Also watching from afar, Mark sees Conquest easily smack Oliver away and joke that he'll start off as a nice warm-up. Not having this, Nolan charges into Conquest, tackling him off his youngest son. Off to the side, and only just coming back to reality now, Alan questions what and how this all just happened. Firing one of the Geldarian's lasers from his back, Zack's own attack has little to no effect on the unnamed Viltrumites. Changing things up, he then quickly activates the suit's strike form and lands a hit that launches the dude off him. Grabbing a hold of Nolan's brick-shaped head though, Conquest can't believe the luck that he has. Out of everyone that he gets to kill, it is the traitor Nolan. He asks what he did to deserve such fortune and quips that Mark is extremely powerful himself, almost as strong as he is. Throwing his mechanically upgraded cybernetic head into Nolan's dome, he fractures the old man's nose. Having broken free though, Mark rushes towards his father before pummeling into Conquest. Nolan screams out to him as the two float off, telling him to be careful. However, Mark replies that this isn't their first fight and he can win. Demanding to know how the old man's alive, Mark starts landing punch after punch. He knows he killed him back on Earth, so while landing another elbow to the dome, screams at him asking how it was he lived. Throwing his arms apart and in turn tossing Mark across the battlefield, Conquest jokes that it seems like the boy isn't as strong as he was back on Earth. Alone now though, Nolan boosts over towards Oliver, who starts verbally harassing the dude, claiming he ain't made. Simultaneously, the fodder-boarding Viltrumite smashes his fist into Zack's armor, completely shattering the face part. Dropping down from above though, Alan lands a left jab that frees up Zack for a while, allowing the tech jacket to repair itself. Still confused himself, Mark demands to know how he's still alive. Finally, spilling the beans to him, Conquest reveals that he awoke encased in steel deep under the Earth's surface. Turns out that there was actually someone stupid enough on the planet that thought they could somehow contain him. Back over with Oliver, Nolan slaps him around a few times. Luckily, Nolan once again intervenes, landing a double-footed slam to his chest. While being driven off by Nolan remarks that he should have made sure he was dead during their last encounter, but Nolan just quips back that he isn't going to make that same mistake this time. Landing his own kick to his old-ass opponent's head, Mark realizes that it had to have been Cecil who kept Conquest alive. He vows to question him on it, but before he can say any more, Conquest cracks him with a left jab and jokes that he's been a bit too optimistic for a dead man. Over with Oliver, dude lands a blow on Nolan while his father bear hugs him from behind. Alan, who's obviously still helping out the other young blood Zack, holds up the unnamed Viltrumite, demanding to know why they only sent 3 of them. Right on damn freaking cue though, Viltrumite reinforcements arrive, sending the battle into complete lunacy. Knowing that they really can't fight this many enemies head on, Nolan looks around and sees that his youngest Oliver is starting to suffocate in space. Remembering that they had just passed a planet moments ago, Nolan tells Oliver to head to it so he can catch his breath. Back in the main bout, and having just taken a punch from Mark, Conquest turns and notices the rat fleeing from battle. He jokes that running away will only ensure his demise, before punching Mark off him and heading in Oliver's direction. Not wanting the little man to suffer, Mark quickly recovers and chases after the two. Bit by bit, he gets closer and closer to the Viltrumites. Reaching their planet's upper atmosphere, Mark tackles Conquest from behind before pile-driving his old ass into the side of a cliff and smashing him into the ground. A violent explosion radiates out, and as the dust clears, we find Mark sitting atop Conquest, fingers gripped around his thick, power slap-ready neck. Laying there, Conquest smiles, sending Mark even further into rage. He goes to speak his mind, however, Conquest flies off in an attempt to break Mark's hold. Not letting go, Mark is dragged from the planet's surface all the way back up into space. He asks Conquest what that was supposed to do to him, annoying the Viltrumite, who knows for a fact that he can make him let go. Stating that it looks like it's time to change the death order, Conquest boosts off and around the planet while Oliver watches from a distance below. Back up in space, Nolan and Ellen fight off the enslaved aliens who showed up as reinforcements for the Viltrumites. Not knowing where Mark and Conquest had gotten off to, Ellen lets them know where they could possibly be. Without hesitation, Nolan immediately leaves the battle to track down the kids. Noticing this, Ellen, utterly fretted that half his team's vanished, jokes that this is just great. Down on the surface of the planet, Mark, who still hasn't let go, continues to suffocate Conquest. He screams at the old fart, asking if he gets it now. There is no way that he is going to let go. In an effort to get him to let go, Conquest throws a right hook that cracks, dislocates, and throws Mark's stomach out of alignment. Coughing up blood, Bro states that he still isn't letting go. He grips down on the Viltrumite's neck as he's sent crashing through the planet's boulderous terrain. Rotating his own fist to ensure the damage on Mark, Conquest then impales him through the torso, causing his disembowelment along with the absolute shattering of his spine. Still not letting go though, Mark crashes to the ground, his hands still latched tightly around Conquest's pathetic throat. Gritting his teeth, Mark keeps applying pressure while questioning how long it'll take until he's done. However, before he can finish his sentence, Conquest begins tearing out our boy's stomach. As both of their eyes roll back in their heads due to the pain, the ancient being makes one last attempt to free himself and takes off, slamming Mark all over the face of the planet. In the end though, Mark collapses onto the ground, victorious, with Conquest dead beside him. Arriving moments later, Nolan and Oliver fly in to see a sight that I'm probably gonna have to blur to be honest. Along with like half this video, let's be honest, like Invincible just does not care about the brutality. Elsewhere on the planet of Taliscaria, Thaedus becomes enraged after hearing of the attack on the ship carrying his boys. The ship captain, who ended up boasting away on the escape hatch, if you were wondering, how he escaped in the first place, apologizes for what happened and explains that his drone had extremely limited capabilities in battle. Having calmed down, Thaedus apologizes and asks for the man to leave him. Moments later, he calls his attendant and requests they assemble everyone for a meeting. Meanwhile, on the Viltrumite warship, Lucen and an unnamed Viltrumite are unable to find Conquest, Mark and Oliver. Knowing that the coalition forces are most likely planning an attack, they decide to cut their losses for now and return to the main fleet. Unbeknownst to them, Zack used his tech jacket to actually hide both him and Ellen on the outside of the Viltrumite ship. Back down on the random planet though, Nolan finishes burying Conquest, much to Oliver's disgust. Nolan though says he was one of the greatest Viltrumite warriors, and that alone demands a certain level of respect. In the end, he may have lost his way. Still, everything he did was in service to the Viltrumite Empire, and that made him even greater than he is. After the short chat, both of them then fly back to check on Mark, who is still in a grievous condition after his battle with Conquest. In an attempt to heal his wounds faster, Nolan had torn off his cape to keep Mark's intestines intact while he heals. Oliver asks how long it will take for his injuries to heal, and Nolan guesses around 3 months, but says it isn't too bad. Confused because obviously being stranded on some random ass planet is pretty damn bad, Oliver asks why, and Nolan says it's more than enough time for him to get to know him better. Meanwhile, somewhere in a random quadrant of space, a coalition ship is sent to retrieve Battle Beast, who had survived months in the icy domain without food or water. Back on the Coalition's home planet of Taliscaria, Thaedus checks on the Scourge virus, before he is then once again called on by his assistants. Leaving his quarters, the alien duo reveal to Thaedus that the Klaxis extract harvested from the Sinlac beetles have been proven extremely effective against Viltrumite tissue. All Coalition forces are now being armed with it as they speak. They also state that the attack on Pikal's ship served as the first strike by the Viltrumites, and it demands immediate retaliation. In order to proceed, they require Thaedus to give the final word. After a moment of deep contemplation, Thaedus gives the order to begin their assault. Over the next week or so, I'd imagine, a battle begins to rage between the side's two forces. Still stranded on that random unnamed planet though, Nolan kills an animal so that Oliver and him have something to eat, having not eaten for almost 2 weeks now. Back on the Viltrumite ship, Tech Jacket gloats about his facial hair growing, much to Ellen's annoyance. Realizing that Ellen just doesn't get it, Zack reveals that the tech jacket cleans him and was most likely shaving him as well. He hasn't even showered since he got the damn thing. The conversation is interrupted though when the Coalition pings the tracking signal in Ellen's gear. Hopping out of their little safety bubble to meet the incoming forces, the duo sees Space Racer arrive with the Coalition troops. Meanwhile, Nolan asks Oliver to keep Mark hydrated while he heals. Oliver brings up how it's almost been a month since they got here, before asking how much longer it's going to take. Nolan says that the recovery is coming along at a good pace, so it shouldn't be more than a few months, hence why he's already started constructing a small shelter for them to live in. Awkwardly, Oliver turns and asks if Nolan really does love Debbie. Looking at his youngest, Nolan says he knows he does. It's taken him months of healing in a Viltrumite prison to realise, but he really does love her. The Viltrumites themselves have a form of affection, but they don't really care for others in the same way that humans do. It's mainly because their lives are so long that they tend to grow distant with one another. He admits that no other Viltrumites would ever admit this, but they all live very lonely lives, especially with their numbers so depleted these days. The time he spent on Earth has 100% changed him. He watched humans grow closer to each other and cared deeply for their loved ones. He finds that what they truly have is something special, something to be admired. He goes on to say that he didn't believe that he could care for her, but over time, raising Mark made him love them both. He says that when he chose to carry out his mission, he beat Mark, and upon looking down at his work, he knew he had made a mistake. A Viltrumite would have felt nothing, but he was devastated. Elsewhere for now though, on Taliscaria, Thaedus tells Ellen and Zack that they will be going to the planet Ula in a few hours, and he needs them battle ready. According to the intel received so far, the Viltrumites have fortified a base there, allowing them to defend against their forces. Hearing all this, Zack's kinda stoked, mentioning that he's also growing a beard, much to Thaedus and Ellen's annoyance, who glare in his direction. Meanwhile, Oliver tells Nolan about his time on Earth. He says Nolan's affection towards his mother was odd even to the people of his planet, however, she never seemed to mind. Turning to his son, he tells Oliver that she was a very good person, his mother obviously, and that their short lifespans are unfortunate. Since he's half Viltrumite though, he believes he'll most likely even outlive him despite the genetic disposition. Gritting his teeth, somewhat annoyed, Oliver goes to say that the Viltrumites view him as inferior and still want to take his life. Before long, the Joy then arrive at the nest of the creature they had ate the previous day. At a similar time, Ellen and Zack attack the outpost on Ula. Sadly for them, the attack seems to fail and they abort before the enemies capture them. Back on the deserted planet, Oliver and Nolan enjoy the time they have together. Nolan then places his hand on Mark's body and says that his spine has now healed from being impaled. Now that Mark's bone is fully finished rebuilding, he will heal at a much faster rate and should be conscious within a month. Now, skipping back over to Taliscaria, Thaedus tells Ellen and Zack that it's believed the Ragnar can exist in space unharmed, and because of this, a tether system is being developed for the next attack. Obviously, the Ragnar are those like weird dinosaur-looking bird type things. On top of that, Battle Beast has also agreed to join the coalition and has taken a squad to the Viltrumite planet of Quintessa. The uprising by the Kresh on Geldaria has also been snuffed out, however, they sadly lost Ula. Luckily for them, another staging ground has been established on Glacier Prime. Currently for the coalition, it's as if they're pushing 3 steps forward and then being pulled 2 steps back. Their armies are effective against the Viltrumite forces of occupied planets. The problem is, they lack heavy hitters. With Mark and Nolan missing, they are left at a loss when the stronger Viltrumite agents stationed on those worlds decide to join in on the fights. Down on the surface of the unknown planet though, Mark, looking hella chatted up now with the beard, grits his teeth together and mumbles the words, "kill you." Seeing this, Nolan remarks that it won't be long before he wakes up now. Elsewhere on Taliscaria, one of the communication aliens speaks in silence with his informant. He says that Battle Beast is currently refusing a period of leave following his victories over the Viltrumites. Thrag, leader of the Viltrumites, thanks the man for feeding him information over all of these years. However, this is not enough. They are still losing to the coalition, which is simply unacceptable in his eyes. From here, he plans to strike the coalition headquarters directly and demands that his inside man shut down their defenses at the time currently being transmitted to him. The fatter alien then responds that it will be done, revealing who the double agent is and confusing the smaller one who wonders who the hell his boy was just talking to. Still on the secret headquarters of the coalition planets, Thaedus thanks all of the other leaders for attending this assembly. He urges all of them to put faith in what they have formed together. He believes as one unit they are strong enough to withstand the trials they now face. He understands that some of them question his judgment in this war. However, he is now able to inform them that their Viltrum agent, known as Nolan, has defected and is working with them. Due to the work they achieved together, Thaedus was able to equip all coalition armies with their newly developed weapons. Sadly though, he reveals to them that the linchpin of their plan, Nolan and his 2 sons, have gone missing. This in turn means that they won't be able to provide them with the assistance they initially planned on. Unfazed by it though, he says that together, as a united front against the Viltrumites, they will succeed in battle. Before he can finish talking, a Nissa suddenly bursts through their headquarters, sending Thaedus flying off somewhere into a city. Obviously, this is because the traitor alien who was literally just chilling behind Thaedus before dropped the defenses at the correct time as asked previously. Unaware of the current conflict, Oliver talks about how he has an attraction towards other humans, but it's their standards towards him. The human parameters of attraction are so damn narrow in his eyes. After the two talk some more though about Oliver finding a lobster lookalike for a girlfriend, Nolan stands still, shocked. Quickly flying off, he soon finds his eldest, Mark, standing back on his feet. Still not sure as to what happened, Mark, with a shaky voice, asks if Nolan killed Conquest. With a fat smile on his face though, his dad corrects him by saying that he did. Over on another planet, Alan walks in on Zack, absolutely destroying the rear end of another alien, much to his obvious shock. But we all know the truth, we all know that Alan was just trying to act shocked, we know what he was truly on here. After an extremely awkward convo between the boys about compatible parts wraps up, Alan tells them to hurry up and get ready as they've got to shoot off to Taliscaria since they just received a distress signal from the planets. Back with the boys, Mark says he wanted this. He wanted to kill Conquest. But how? How did he kill him? He was so much stronger than before and all he did was act scared in that battle. Nolan argues though that Mark is much stronger than he thinks. On top of that, he had his rage and adrenaline pumping through his veins. He was more invested in the fight and Conquest only acted as a spectator. Mark though notes that he also promised to himself he wouldn't kill anyone anymore. However, Nolan reminds him that this is war and it's time they get back into the fights. Back on Taliscaria, while the Viltrumite warships lay waste to the planet, Thrag talks with the skull of Agril, the emperor of the Viltrumite Empire. Down in the midst of battle, Thaedus throws the remains of a building off him and rushes over to who he believes the traitor is. Screaming back though that it wasn't him, the small alien points to the real traitor and charges towards him, ready to end his dumbass life. Dropping down from above though, Craig slams Thaedus into the planet's surface. Without hesitation, Bro immediately gets back up and hits Thrag with a right hook. He then jumps up in an attempt to get away, but Craig grabs his leg and pulls him back. Randomly though, a phaser beam strikes Craig's head. Looking to his right, the one-eyed Viltrumite sees Ellen and Zack flying towards him. While Ellen fights Craig, Zack attempts to rescue Thaedus, even managing to pick him up and beginning to fly away. Anissa though quickly intervenes, grabbing Zack and tearing him away from the coalition leader. Squeezing down on the young man, Anissa tries to suffocate him. Luckily, Thaedus reappears and punches the female back, freeing Zack. Over in the other bout, Craig calls Ellen a foolish Unopin, while Bro argues that his crappy empire is already on the ropes. Seeing this, Zack says that they should probably intervene in his fight while Anissa is down, but Thaedus tells him that Ellen is more than capable of holding his own. For now, they just need to regroup what troops they can, otherwise this battle is truly lost. Suddenly though, Zack looks up to see Nolan and both of his sons arriving back on the battlefield. Anissa immediately grabs the duo, claiming that they need to pay attention when someone's trying to kill them. Diving in and punching her back, Nolan jokes that that's some bloody good advice. At the same time, Mark and Oliver attack the enslaved Viltrumite forces, specifically aiming for their weapons in an attempt to not actually hurt them. Joining the duo, Thaedus asks for them to work their way to the outskirts of the city, where others obviously are in need of help. Mark replies that he will, but first, he needs to try something else out. Flying off with his little bro, Mark tells him to copy his exact stance while keeping up with him. Gaining tremendous speed, the duo charge into the Viltrumite warship, destroying it and subsequently splitting it in two. Inside the ship, the skull is sent flying away from Thrag, who quickly rushes to catch it. Having just watched the boys destroy the ship, Thaedus and Zack immediately fly up to catch the other half, stopping it from falling on the city below. Knowing that they can't just let the ship fall too, Mark and Oliver speed down and grab the other half before both groups throw it into outer space. screaming that this is not possible. Thrag questions where they are as he vows to destroy them for this. Almost immediately coming to his senses though, Thrag turns away from the planet as he knows he cannot risk fighting them again yet. Back below, Anissa and Craig punch their opponents away before quickly heading back up into space to escape. Having already made it back onto the planet's surface, Nolan pats Ellen on the back as he points out the information aliens arguing between themselves. Obviously, they must have only moved like 5 or 6 meters in the time span that this fight took place. I just feel like the increase in strength throughout these last few volumes has been insane. The small alien is utterly enraged by the other one's betrayal, citing that they shared a brain together for the first 6 months of their lives. They dedicated themselves to the coalition. But he, letting his trigger finger loose, bro drops his op to the floor while screaming for him to tell him everything he knows about the Viltrumites' plans. Thaedus intervenes though and says that he will pay for his crimes, but first he needs to tell them everything he knows. The betrayer, with his freaking brains falling out, reveals to them that it doesn't matter now, it's too late. They said if this battle was lost, they would reconvene on the planet Viltrum to stage a counterattack. In his pathetic eyes, he thinks they don't stand a chance against all of them, and the coalition is over. Sometime later, and while Taliscaria is being reconstructed, Thaedus gives a speech to all of his allies, stating that the Viltrum War is over. Over the last 24 hours, they've received nearly 80% of the worlds counted as a part of the Viltrum Empire. These worlds have abandoned their Viltrumite overlords mainly because of the fact that a few Viltrumites have taken their side. They all see the coalition as being stronger than the Empire was, and without the previous overlords around, they've now switched sides. Pondering a question though, he asks where the Viltrumites have gone. This recent abandonment of previous worlds seems to align with his assistant's intel about the Viltrumites regrouping on Viltrum and staging one last final strike against them. With this being their last strike, his plan is to launch a preemptive counterattack and strike before they have any real time to start planning. They will meet them on their home turf and destroy what little hope of succeeding they have left. In response, Oliver responds with an excited "hell yeah." Of course, out of like absolutely everyone, only Oliver's gassed up. I can't wait for what happens to bro, just you guys wait. Following this, all 7 of them get on a spaceship and head off in preparation for battle. A little while later, Thaedus tells the boys that they are minutes away from the planet and need everyone to gather in the main hangar. Leaving the hangar, the 7 of them then begin flying towards Viltrum. Confused, Mark asks why they didn't go closer with the ship, to which Thaedus clarifies that the planet itself is a tomb. It's a monument to those who fell victim to the Scourge virus. There are also many reasons the Viltrumites would choose to set up a staging ground here. The symbolism mainly, but also as a memorial to those fallen. Down on the surface, the planet holds a number of space defenses, making it difficult for anyone to navigate their way too closely. Having gotten close enough themselves, Mark then starts to see a ring of what he thinks could be bodies. Getting this confirmed for him, Thaedus explains how the fallen are preserved by the coldness of space. That there is the monument to their sacrifice. That is why the planet is a tomb. There is nothing of the place he once knew. That time is long forgotten, dead to anyone who once knew it. Picking up speed, the group tries to make a surprise entrance. Lying in wait though, Thula sends her hairblade at the group's leader, hitting him with a gnarly backshot. In immediate retaliation, Battlebeast smashes her across the face with his mace, then grabs her head with his hulking fist. Noticing a force approaching, Thaedus then tells everyone to get ready. Nolan, Mark, and Thaedus witness Thrag lead the charge in their direction. Screaming out, he states to all of those who make themselves an enemy of the Viltrumite Empire, prepare yourselves for death. Seeing how grossly outnumbered they are here, Thaedus tells them to move from opponent to opponent quickly so they never get overwhelmed. Wishing that Space Racer was in this battle, bro then boasts onto the scene while apologizing for taking so damn long. It's just his damn birds took too long to get locked in place. Firing the gliffity glip, Space Racer lays havoc to the Viltrumite forces, even blowing one dude's shoulder completely off. Then, without waiting a second longer, he releases the Ragnar, who are now under the control of his mind control devices. The beasts then start devouring the enemy forces, leaving Thrag completely stunned with the loss of men. Speaking up, he tells his men to not fight them, avoid the beasts, and let the vastness of space be their demise. Anissa rushes to Nolan and scoffs in his face. She says that even though he gave them all of their weaknesses, it's still not going to work. In another bout, a Viltrumite attempts to suffocate Zack. Luckily, Ellen pops in and punches the dude's head straight off his damn shoulders. Having watched his Viltrum buddy get slaughtered right in front of his eyes, his boy rushes in to avenge him. However, Ellen easily turns and violates him with a brutal uppercut. Nearby, Mark and Oliver fight off Viltrumites in their own skirmish. A filthy Viltrumite pureblood finds the fact that Oliver, an inferior half-breed, is here utterly infuriating. Shutting his ass down though, Oliver drops down low and lands a blow on the Viltrumite's nut, sending his future lineage straight into the Shadow Realm. Quickly catching back up with his Space Ghost Rider, Thrag punches him off his hover cycle and states that the Viltrum Empire will win this battle. Begging that the Moran shuts his pie hole already, Mark rushes to engage Thrag, much to Thaedus' worry, who screams out for someone to stop him. Thrag tenses as Mark attacks him with a punch, causing it to have little to no effect on him. Throwing his hand back, Thrag backhands the dude back off him. Flying over himself, Oliver calls Thrag out, saying a black hole just called and it wants its suck back. Easily catching his pathetic punch though, Thrag jokes that he is so very funny, always cracking jokes. He's even a man who enjoys a joke or two himself. Squeezing down on his arm, he asks the kid to stop him if he's heard this one. Punching Oliver across the face, Thrag tears off his arm and breaks his jaw effortlessly. Watching this, Anissa grabs a stunned Nolan, while nearby, Mark rushes back in to attack him. Slamming into him from behind, Mark screams that he killed his brother. Throwing his fists forward in a pure display of dominance, Mark tries to take Thrag down, but only manages to give him a slight nosebleed. Thrag mocks Mark, stating that he is in over his head, and that Conquest even feared him. Socking him with a hard right hook though, Mark reveals that he killed Conquest, and now he will kill him. Having overheard what Pro just said, a few Viltrumites look up in pure astonishment, realizing that that dude was somehow the one who defeated Conquest. With Anissa distracted, Nolan then punches her while confidently stating that everything she heard was damn true. Getting a brief moment of respite, Thaedus tells Space Racer to come to him as they need to attempt something the enemy just won't expect. Over in his own fight, Battle Beast uses the Viltrumite Thula as a weapon and swings her around, smashing her into a few other Viltrumites. As everyone then manages to get closer to each other, Thaedus tells all of them to follow him. On cue, he tells Space Racer to fire his gun into the dead center of the planet. Shooting off a blast from his gun, the group quickly follows it down towards the planet below. Thaedus reminds them all that they have to time this perfectly and all reach the surface at the exact same time. If the core even has a moment to stabilize, they could easily die here. Not being able to keep up with the main trio, Ellen and Tech Jacket decide to fend off the main assault above them, while Mark, Nolan, and Thaedus move at what I can only freaking assume is light speed. Seeing that Mark was beginning to slip behind the two oldies though, Nolan pulls him in close to match their exact speed. Entering the planet's atmosphere, their three turn into a massive beam of light that descends down after the Space Racer's attack. I like how you can barely see Space Racer's bullet anymore that's going towards the surface, even though it was massive up in space. The alien shot then hits the planet's surface, opening up a small enough hole for all three of them to go down to their planet's core. Immediately boosting it down that hole, the trio quickly reach the planet's inner core, causing the surface to quickly start ripping apart. Exploding out of the other side of the planet, the group successfully manages to destroy the planet's Viltrum. However, moments after making it out of the blast zone, Viltrumite soldiers grab a hold of them and pin them down. Mark and Thaedus are relentlessly pummeled, while Nolan is just barely held back by two random ass dudes. The planet's destruction though then causes an extremely violent second shockwave that knocks every single combatant in the battle unconscious. After slowly coming back to reality, Mark rushes over to catch Oliver, who was left floating nearby, slowly leaving the battlefield. Awake himself now, Thaedus speaks to all Viltrumites, letting them know that the war is over. They no longer have a planet, nor any place to run. The entire universe is united against them, and the best thing for them to do would simply be to surrender. Clutching his fists and with tears in his eyes, Thrag says he brought this upon them. It was him who set this in motion, carried it all out. Thaedus of Viltrum, the betrayer. Thrag, who suffered no injuries from the shockwave, begins to cry over the loss of his home planet. Sternly, Thaedus says he's prepared for whatever wrath is about to unfold. However, he knows Thrag has no empire anymore and needs to surrender. Screaming back that he sickens him, Thrag dives at the enemy before tearing his head straight off his freaking body. To him, there is nothing left but revenge. Holding the coalition leader's head up, he gladly says that at long last his grateful Lord Agril has been avenged. With everyone looking back stunned, Thrag goes full mountain on the dude's head and explodes it in the palm of his hands. Floating somewhere below this, Mark cries over the thought of Oliver dying. Still concentrated on the fight though, Ellen and Nolan ready themselves for the final showdown. Unconcerned either way, Thrag tells them to grieve. Grieve while they can. After all, they are next. Not hesitating, Thrag rushes past the others, purposefully aiming to take Mark out first. He smacks him across the face. However, Mark quickly recovers, kicking the Viltrumite in the stomach and punching his thick-ass dome. With the attack having no effect though, Thrag easily grabs Mark by the throat and starts to go on a little monologue. His history, Mark's heritage, their combined heritage. He had initially planned to return to Viltrum, victorious, waiting for the ranks of Viltrumites to replenish. In comparison though, Thrag has taken nothing from Mark that could ever compare. He has robbed them of everything, and his death won't even begin to make up for it. Launching in and punching him off Mark, Nolan tells Thrag that it's all over. He's lost. The best thing for him to do now would simply be to surrender. Thrag though, angered that Nolan sided with Thaedus the great betrayer, asks if he knows why they kept his defection a secret. Staring into his eyes, Thrag reveals it was because Thaedus was the man who murdered their great lord, Agril. He was the one who brought about the dark times. It's also believed that he was the person behind the Scourge fires, which stole what little hope they had left of finding a true heir. Nolan just replies that he isn't the person he once was. He now feels as if their people deserve nothing less than complete extinction for what they have done. No matter how it pains him, it's probably the correct opinion. Throwing his head forward and crushing Nolan's nose, Thrag lets him know that for his crimes, Nolan shall die. Cutting in on their belt though, Basil Beast goes to strike Thrag, but the dude easily grabs him by the throat and throws him out of range. Nearby, Anissa, Craig, and a bunch of other fodder no-names pummel Ellen relentlessly, managing to even break his arm. Randomly though, Battle Beast's body comes shooting in out of freaking nowhere, freeing his Unopen friend from the beating he was just in. Not letting him get away though, Anissa flies over and punches Ellen. Again though, she's taken by surprise as a blast from Space Racer's cannon rips through one of the fodder Viltrumites. Quickly saving his mate from certain death, Space Racer grabs Ellen and tells him that it's time they leave. Dude tries to say that they can't, however, big old Space Racer hits him with some hard facts. The destruction of Viltrum was almost sheer luck, and it's knocked their forces off balance. Still, with the way everyone is, they are outnumbered and it was never meant to be a full-on assault. Ellen was initially meant to be a part of the advance team who would position themselves safely on Viltrum and wait for Space Racer along with the Ragnar forces. This battle here has been an utter disaster in his eyes, and if they do not leave now, then all of them will die. Ellen asks about the other Viltrums on their side, but Space Racer says it's best to call for help from others. If the guys aren't dead already, then they will just have to fend for themselves for the time being. Over with the guys, Thrag readies himself for the beatdown he's about to give out. Mark asks his dad how they beat him, and he says that they really can't. He reveals that in order to be named Grand Regent, Thrag was trained from birth to be the strongest Viltrumites and educated in an innumerous number of combat skills. Launching in though, Thrag grabs the duo's neck while stating that what Nolan was saying is true. Nolan, while quickly starting to succumb to the pain, tells Mark that he's always loved him. He initially thought that the love made him weaker, but now he can tell that it's made him a stronger person. In one last ditch to save his son, Nolan kicks Thrag's hand away and tells him to make a run for it. Mark attempts to escape, but Thrag, having left Nolan floating behind, easily catches up to him. He grabs Mark's hair and brutally smashes down on his face. Holding him up by the throat now, he says that he'll be a bloody mess by the time his father catches up. Getting in quicker than he thought though, Thrag lets go of Mark and at a superhuman speed disembowels Nolan. Alone with Mark now, Thrag then grabs his head and goes to squeeze down on it. However, he hesitates. Seeing their leader do this, the nearby Viltrumites like Craig ask why he's hesitating. replying that they actually need all Viltrumites if their race is going to survive. Thrag then demands that they call over their ship. Boosting towards his leader, Krieg argues that they need Viltrumites loyal to them. Comfortably blocking his attack though, Thrag tells him that they need them if they are to survive, them above all others. Moments later, the Viltrumite forces take their warship and leave Mark and Nolan to die in the cold vastness of space. Sometime later, Captain Mikkel arrives with another one of his ships and learns that the boys are somehow alive despite their horrific injuries. Getting the boys inside the ship, he then gets his navigator to set a path back to Taliscaria. 2 more weeks pass before Mark finally wakes up from his coma. Standing by his bed, Alan says that it's great to see him awake now. Sitting up, Mark asks what he's wearing, and Bro says that his arm was actually broken in the battle, so obviously it's a cast. Plus, on top of that, he also reveals that he was made the leader of the coalition of planets after Thaedus' death. Trying to grapple with the changes that have happened, Mark, assuming his dad woke up before him, questions if he happens to be around. Alan reveals that he woke up a few days earlier and leads him down a corridor. Once entering the medical chamber, Mark sees his brother in a stasis pod with a new cybernetic arm and jaw. Turning around to see his son now awake, Nolan reveals that the Viltrumite brain is amazing and can survive in an extended period of time without oxygen, hence why they were able to hold their breath for so long. However, he suspects the main reason Oliver managed to survive in space is because of his mother's specific genetic makeup. The solution that Oliver is currently suspended in is enhancing his natural regenerative abilities, and his skin is even beginning to grow over the prosthetic replacements. If the speed at which his body is healing keeps going, then Nolan thinks he'll be out of the tube within a week and back to physical rehabilitation. Entering through another door, Zack arrives to tell Ellen that there is no sign of the Viltrumites. Confused, Mark asks what he means, to which Ellen clarifies they are doing nothing at all. They have disappeared completely since the battle ended, and there has been no sign of them ever since. Even though the Coalition has eyes over all quadrants of the galaxy, the group hasn't been seen anywhere. They've searched former planets of the Empire and nothing. Without those planets backing them, their numbers will slowly dwindle over time, to the point that any assault against the Coalition would just be a disaster for them. So it makes sense now that they're lying low, preparing something in complete silence. Conventional wisdom says that they'd attack their formerly owned planets, yet as Ellen just said, they've already checked those places and stationed troops on them in preparation for the forces to randomly appear there. Taking this all in, Mark begins to panic. He says that they've gone and left them alive for a reason, him and his father specifically. They just went and destroyed their home planet, and right after, Thrag was ready to kill them, but for some random reason, he didn't. Mark poses the idea that maybe he thought of another way to possibly hurt them, something more painful than even death itself. Mark states that Alan cannot find them because they are not even in this galaxy anymore. The Viltrumites have left it and gone to his homeworld of Earth. Delving into his thoughts, Mark begins to think about the possibilities of the Viltrumites already being on Earth. He pictures Cecil along with all of Earth's heroes, including his girlfriend, being killed by them. Meanwhile, at the Coalition of Planets headquarters, Alan is having all of his things moved into his new room, obviously because he's boss now. Talia, with the booty from God, attempts to comfort him, saying that his friends will be fine. Alan though knows he doesn't have the luxury of time. He now commands the Coalition planets, and he's got far too much to worry about. The idea that the Viltrumites did end up going to Earth haunts Alan, as he in a way wishes it was true. He also reveals that he misses Big Zack, which is, kind of sad, his little earthen mate. Back on the small ship though that Mark and his dad are using to get back to Earth, Zack enters and sees the quiet atmosphere between the two. He tells them that he knows he isn't near them strength-wise, but he will help in whatever way he can. Earth is his home too after all. Realizing that no one is even talking to him though, Zack leaves, telling them they suck. Moments later, Nolan begins to discuss how much he cares about Oliver. He hates that he had to leave him behind, but understands it was probably for the right reason. Mark, still stuck in his own thoughts, hallucinates that Thrag had killed his mother and her boyfriend. Coming back to reality though, he asks if his dad was asking him something. Nolan though says it really doesn't matter. Instead, he should probably get away from that window for now and grab a bite to eat with him. Setting up a preemptive plan in case the Viltrumites invaded Earth, Nolan tells Zack that he will rescue as many heroes as possible that have been imprisoned because they will need everyone's help in battle. Once they get confirmation, they'll contact Taliscaria and warn the Coalition that the Viltrumites are on Earth. From there, it will probably take a few weeks before the Coalition manages to even reach them, so their plan will have to be to wait and gather forces in the meantime. Having snuck past the two of them though while they were talking, Mark quickly jumps out of the spaceship and flies off in front of it towards Earth. Soaring into the upper atmosphere of the planet and down through the clouds, Mark is completely surprised to see no war below him. Nolan also quickly catches up to him and confirms he saw nothing as well, believing that the Viltrumites mustn't be here. Turning around though, the duo come face to face with Thrag, who says they very much are here. Mark screams, saying that if he does anything to the people of this planet, he's already killed Conquest, so he knows there's a way to kill him. Not waiting, Mark rushes Thrag and attacks him, however it has little effect as the dude just grabs him by the throat. He tells the young man that he hasn't done anything yet. Throwing him off, Thrag just says he can fight all he wants, but he is not alone here. If by chance he injures him, then it's guaranteed the rest of his forces would destroy the entire planet. Because of this, he suggests that the three of them should probably talk instead. Confused with what the big man even means, Mark chooses to talk with him for the time being. Pleased that he chose the right decision, Thrag reveals that he has come here to offer a truce. There are exactly 37 Viltrumites, some heavily injured, living among the human population. That number alone is more than enough to tear the planet in half, killing everyone before Mark or anyone else ever had the chance to stop them. Plus, it would be more than fair of a retaliation for what the Coalition just did to their homeworld. However, Thrag says he was not made Grand Regent for revenge. He was chosen to rule in order to ensure the survival of his people, and from what he's seen, he knows he cannot win the current war. So, since the war is pretty much over, he offers his surrender under one condition. They took his planet, so now they're going to take theirs. Mark screams back asking if he's insane, however Thrag cuts him off, saying he needs to realise that even if he wanted to make them leave right now, he just couldn't. So because of this, he proposes that they will start to live among the humans. No one will ever know they are here. The people of Earth, along with Mark and the heroes, will have no contact with them, and they will never interfere with any matters on Earth. It's simple. Thrag says he does not want their presence to be known, and in turn, they will not attack them, nor assist in defending them. The Viltrumites will live as humans with humans, intermingling and interbreeding. This is the only way Thrag sees a future where the Viltrumite people survive. It will take time, but they will restore the ranks over the course of 1,000 years. The children of human Viltrumite couples and their children's children will all join the ranks. Then their children will have more children, and the ranks of Viltrumites will thrive with the infusion of human DNA. Though Thrag knows the two of them were responsible for his planet's destruction, they will now provide them with the ultimate salvation as repentance. What Nolan and Mark have achieved represent to Thrag the future of their race, what they must become and what they must do in order to survive. Fixing his eyes upon them, Thrag demands that they give him an answer now, as the last thing he wants is to destroy their race's last hope. Taking a moment to think, Mark asks if he's proposing they wait for a while, then resume the fights when their numbers have increased. Stating that today is not tomorrow, Thrag argues that he knows what the results would be if they fought today, so why wouldn't he want to put it off for a while? They are stuck in a stalemate currently, and all Mark needs to do is make a simple decision. Mark rages out though, saying he can't and he won't agree to this. However, after his dad places his hand on his shoulder, thoughts of the world being destroyed flow through his head. In the end, Mark reluctantly agrees to the terms. Hearing this, Thrag thanks Nolan and his son for saving their species and says that they have chosen wisely. Moments later, he flies off into the distance. Turning their heads back, the boys then notice Zack pulling up in his own suit and inform him that the war is now over. Obviously, they can't really tell Zack about what just happened, or word could possibly get back to the Coalition, then the Earth itself would be doomed from two completely different fronts. You know, the Viltrumites would probably destroy it because they got caught here, and the Coalition would probably destroy it, sending the Scourge virus there. But either way, while Zack then rambles on about how he never got to say goodbye to Alan, the duo leave him to go to their house. Over at their own house, Debbie talks on the phone with her boyfriend and decides to break up with his old ass. Literally as she's hanging up the phone, both Mark and Nolan arrive, and a crying but extremely happy Debbie hugs Mark after 10 months of being away from him. It's quite interesting to see that this war took place over like a 10-month period. I wonder like how long they were traveling through like different sections of space and were injured for, meaning they couldn't, be in other fights while, say, Alan was off doing his own thing. Either way, enough of that. She quickly notices that Oliver isn't with the duo and asks them where he is. Nolan tells her that he was badly injured, but he is still alive and recovering on Taliscaria. Getting close, he asks who Paul is, and she initially avoids the question by telling Mark to go and see Eve, as things aren't really going too well for her. With the elder son gone, Nolan then learns who Paul is, much to his disappointment. Debbie, though, becomes angry and tells him that he has no reason to be upset at her, but before she can continue explaining like what happened, Cecil emerges from his teleporter and immediately fires his gun at Nolan. After realizing what's going on, he apologizes, citing that Mark told him he had reformed, but his reflexes always get the better of him. Elsewhere, Mark arrives at Eve's house and climbs in through the window. Hearing him, she tells him to stop, revealing the noticeable weight gain she doesn't want him to see. Not concerned with her weight though, like, good on you champ, Mark hugs her and says that he loves her. It's kind of crazy that bro doesn't even know the real reason why she's gained weight or managed to put 2 and 2 together himself yet, but to be honest, she really does need to be a little bit more honest with him about her feelings, or at least that's kind of what I think. I'll go over it more in a second. Over at the Pentagon building though, Cecil walks in through the halls before coming to a door and sighing. After walking through it, he leans over the railing before telling Dr. D.A. Sinclair that the war is over, so they are not going to need pretty much, well, anything that he's worked on. Down below, it's shown that a massive army of reanimen had been created in the likeness of all of the Viltrumites that have currently been to Earth, so obviously none of the ones that are on the previously destroyed planet Viltrum. But either way, elsewhere on the planet, Zack arrives back at his place and learns from his neighbours that his father is actually up at the space station waiting for him. Once up there with him, the duo look at one another before quickly commenting on the growth of their beards. Back with Mark, Eve updates him on what has happened with the business. She also reveals that her powers are back to normal now, and she reveals that she has saved enough money to buy land, similar to what she used to have in Africa. I still think it's so stupid that Eve has to save money and all this kind of crap when she literally has the power to create anything. However, since Mark was gone in her eyes and she didn't know if he was coming back, she never really saw a point of buying a place. Hugging him, Eve then starts to cry. The thought of him dying and never seeing his face again run through her mind. She silently asks if he was even in a coma at one point. So I'm also just going to slightly skip forward here because I get that it's an extremely difficult topic to talk about. Girl gets herself into this situation, then freaks out over not knowing how to tell the truth to her boyfriend. That is pretty much the entire gist of what happens, and being honest to someone you love should never be scary, so I can't understand the predicament here. But either way, moving on. Nolan and Debbie then talk. She even mentions that seeing Nolan again made her feel odd when she was with Paul. Nolan tells her that he misses her and they end up holding hands. She pulls back though and Nolan pushes forward, arguing that he had to overcome a millennia of beliefs. Debbie though becomes angry and cries, wishing that things were how they used to be. Up in the sky above Earth now, Mark flies around looking for any sort of danger that could be happening. Coming to a halt, he states that he killed Conquest, destroyed the planet Viltrum and their empire, but now they are here. The war is definitely over, but he doesn't feel like he won at all. Meanwhile, at the Coalition of Planets headquarters in Taliscaria, Alan receives an urgent message from Thaedus, one that was meant to play at some point after his passing. The message tells Alan about the Scourge virus and asks that in the scenario where it looks as if they might lose the war, then he needs to do whatever he can to fully eradicate all Viltrumite life forever. So that there actually does bring us to the very end of the Viltrumite war. If you guys want me to continue on with this Invincible series, then let me know down in the comment section below, and help in trying to push this video to say 3k likes, as that'll let me know that you all want more Invincible and whatnot. I'll probably end up covering a few of the other big fights in the series before this season of the anime does end up finishing, but either way, When it comes to the Viltrumite War, I have things that I don't necessarily like about it, but overall, it was freaking insane. The fighting was awesome, and just the complete and utter brutality that you see when two different Viltrumites end up fighting each other is brutal. Like, poor Oliver just never stood a chance. I don't know where he gets this cockiness from, but every fight he gets in, he gets brutalized, then he's straight back at it with the cockiness. No wonder he's emo when he's in his normal clothes and stuff. It all makes sense. Either way, I don't really have too much else to say on it. Like, it's a great arc. It's just a little bit skippy aroundy too much at points for me, and that's kind of like the only real bad part of it that I found. But either way, if you all want to see more from me, then make sure to check out the Patreon, as it really helps out with just extra things in general and supporting me and whatnot. By the way, for now it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I'll see you all in a bit. Bye.